We've all heard of a game being described as a Metroidvania. Most of us know that it's a bastard offspring of the two similarly paced games, Metroid and Castlevania. Slightly fewer people are aware of the fact that the main character in Metroid is called Samus. Most people who know that also know that Samus is not a Sigma male, but actually a Sigma female. The slightest sliver of these people has actually played the game, especially if you're here on my channel. This almost instantaneously formulates the obvious questions in all of our small gamer brains. Why? Hi, but you can just simply call me Amazon. Today we take a look at the first half of the Metroidvania genre, a game that was released to an audience of, at the time, Pac-Man gamers, Galaxian underperformers, and Tetris high-scoring today boomers old people. I say that with utmost respect, with the most sincere jealousy. I want to have lived in the time that the galaxy-altering game Metroid was released. Because after having finished the game, I can confidently tell you that this game is an obvious masterstroke of pixels and side-scrolling action adventuring even today. Why Metroid? Well, Metroid is a game that speaks for itself. But it's not as important as Doom, the game that I played in the first episode of The Quest to Play Everything. Unlike Doom, it hasn't gained the vast popularity that the Doom franchise has. This is not that weird though. The Metroidvania genre is just not as important as the shift of perspective from 2D to first person. But you shouldn't let the toweringly monumental shift in the gaming microsphere, Doom, get in the way of the almost as important genre shift that Metroid brought us with its release in 1986. I should probably tell you what Metroidvania actually means. So I will. Let's look at Metroid, using it as an example of a Metroidvania. At the very beginning of the game, you can't blow up blocks on the ground. A pretty weird problem to have, to be completely fair, but after progressing deep enough into the alien landscape, you will get the bombs. A pretty cool weapon for destroying floors, killing aliens on the ground, and jumping while crouched. This item changes the way the earlier places in the map work. They make things that earlier were not accessible. This is what a Metroidvania entails and why Metroid is such an important title in the history of gaming, alongside Castlevania, a game I haven't played. Metroid is a game that used the entirety of the available hardware for its revolutionary level design, its gameplay, and its secrets. But even with all of these humps and obstacles in Nintendo's way, they still managed to make the world of Metroid better than most world's modern games try to create. I say this not because of the awesome music that I will speak about in a second or two, but the oppressive theming of the entire game. There are some rooms that feel, and frankly are, unfair. Just like they should be. There are aliens here. Of course we should feel cornered. The enemies aren't very lively in their animation, but the fact that they mercilessly hunt you, especially at the end of the game, makes you feel on the run, until you're comfortable with your loadout and movement. The world from a visual standpoint is simplistic. The sprites are well made and very good for the NES, but they're not amazing. I mean, look at Kid Icarus on the same console. There's not even a contest here. That game looks like doo-doo fart compared to this one. While we're still talking music, let's listen to the OST. The original soundtrack of Metroid varies wildly in quality. I say this as someone that controversially thought that the Racing Lagoon soundtrack was kind of just okay. So take my opinion in whatever way you want. Starting with the intro music. I don't dislike the intro music, but outside of being kind of menacing, I think it's just okay. But once you actually get into the game, you're met with two almost perfect tracks, one after another. First, the little jingle that plays when you spawn in. A satisfying tune that gets you excited to just get on with it. This is followed by the so-called Brinstar theme, named after the area Brinstar. This is the best song in the game, and probably the one you'll hear the most in your playthrough. As an example of a bad track, which there are very few of, let's look at Ridley's Lair. This is a song that you won't hear all that much of, but once you do, you'll regret ever walking into that area of the map. It's just that annoying. There's a similar track to this that is in fact even more annoying, but there's a great reason why. 8-bit is not a lot of bits. Metroid's level design is what the game is most known for. It shares this feat with Castlevania, a series of games I haven't played. The world of Metroid has aged quite badly though, not in its platforming or even its layout, except that it all looks a bit too much like itself, which is more of a critique of its graphics than level design, making traversing a bit hard sometimes. Also, some of the backtracks in the beginning section of the map is a bit tedious. Even if backtracking is one of the main features in the Metroidvania genre, there should have been more shortcuts to unlock, or maybe some teleports, because a lot of this game is just running around looking for a way back, not the way forward. I guess what I'm saying is that Metroid has been outmatched in this area. In Metroid, you'll only use 3 buttons and a D-pad if you're not pausing every second or two. This means that you have to make an intuitive and actually good controller layout. For example, to drop a bomb, you don't press the drop bomb button. You crouch into the now iconic ball and press the attack button. This is ingenious. Now, let's look at the actual gameplay though. Metroid is a platformer with simple combat. This simple combat gets deeper and deeper the more you unlock in terms of weapons and upgrades. There's some real depth here, and some really cool stuff you can do by combining different pieces of equipment. The so-called Ice Beam is probably the best example of this. A weapon upgrade often used for freezing an enemy, jumping on top of them, and then accessing a new area or secret. This is probably the second most known thing about the game Metroid. Its ludicrous reliance on secrets. These secrets are admittedly often pretty cool, but they range from easy to find to so hard to find they should probably never have been found up until this very day. There are a couple of cheesy traps like this hole, a simple time waste. This was a bit of an intended feature though. I say this because these games' endings are based on the amount of time it took you to get there. I got one squarely in the middle. Mostly because I didn't spend a lot of time backtracking and or finding the various areas. I did this on my NES playthrough, the playthrough that I ultimately never got through because of the heaps of bullshit that this game served me up. Metroid is a game that gives the player a single goal: beat Ganon, but replaces Ganon with an, on paper, pretty scary alien threat. This is a very old school way of making narrative in a game, and the style that has been mostly lost to time, except in one faithful game, the masterpiece, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Just like in that game, there are a couple of things you have to do first, and a couple of things you probably should do just to make it easier to beat Ganon. This is a very good way to make the player feel like they're in control, and also makes the game feel larger than it actually is. But this game, unlike Breath of the Wild, is really hard after acquiring most of the upgrades. That is why I will, in this section, compare the 1986 game about side-scrollingly running around shooting critters with a gun arm, which is a pretty cool way to kill small alien insects, with the 2011 game Dark Souls for the somewhat newer video game consoles, the Microsoft Xbox 360 and Sony PlayStation 3, that I have, for the purpose of writing and making this video, captured the gameplay from the PC version of the game. I did this just to be able to say that Metroid for the Nintendo Entertainment System is the Dark Souls of No, I won't finish that sentence. In fact, I refuse to. But you probably know exactly what I was about to say. You should know that what I was about to say is probably not even true, outside of the fact that Metroid is a pretty hard game sometimes. Actually, do you know what I hate? I hate those people who compare games with the deep, frankly sophisticated combat and level design of the first Dark Souls, just to call them harder than usual. This long-winded rant of mine is about to end, but before it does, let's actually compare Metroid to Dark Souls. Metroid is a I was just about to call Metroid a Metroidvania. Which it is, but that would be the equivalent of saying that Dark Souls is the Dark Souls of action RPGs, which is pretty stupid. Also, I'm pretty sure that comparing somewhat hard games with Dark Souls has become more of a meme than an actual way to describe a title, so maybe we should all just forget about this little rant of mine and get back to the point of the video. Does Metroid, the totally really old game from the 1980s, still hold up in the current year? Yes, in many ways it does.
But...
And I say this with the hugest asterisk beside it. I think you should probably play this game on a newer piece of hardware, preferably on a device that lets you set save states. I say this with the entirety of my small but cherished reputation of being a, quote, gamer, unquote. I played through this game twice. Once, about halfway through the game on the original hardware, using a Nintendo Entertainment System, an original copy of the game from the year it was released in Europe, and the very uncomfortable original Nintendo Entertainment System controller. The combined video and audio cables were not connected to a CRT TV though, a piece of hardware I actually do own, sitting in the basement. No. Not in a cardboard box underneath another cardboard box underneath a long forgotten foldable chair. No, this CRT sits right next to the open spot my future TV has taken up in front of my handed down yet uncomfortably comfortable 3-seat sofa that smells kind of strange. But as I wrote this review, I didn't have this setup at hand. I was actually a bit under 2 hours away from this gaming haven, so I played Metroid, the unbridled masterpiece of the NES, on a Walmart equivalent LCD TV. But I ultimately enjoyed my time with the save-stateable, perfectly emulated version of the game more. There's that word again. Save state. Sheets. I say this as someone who has almost completed the game in both ways and as someone who has completed Elden Ring, but with the Mimic tier, so maybe not the greatest of gamers out there. Metroid is not hard in the same way that Dark Souls is. Metroid is unruly and often unfair. Its hitboxes suck, the movement will often feel floaty and unresponsive, and the placement of enemies are just kind of annoying. There's also some serious slowdown in this game, making the game run in slow motion. This happened just a tad bit too often, both on the original console and an emulator. In the opposite direction, we have Dark Souls, which goes out of its way to both look and feel hard without being unfair at all. This is why I wholeheartedly recommend playing this game on an emulator, but honestly, I don't recommend you play this game at all. This may or may not come as a shock to you. I've made this video after all, but if I'm being completely honest, I can't really recommend this to someone that doesn't have any kind of nostalgia for the game or a serious pain fetish. To be clear, this game is outmatched in every single category. Just play Super Metroid instead. I heard that one was pretty good. And on my ever-expanding list of games that I will eventually play. There are better Metroidvanias out there, and unlike Doom, this game doesn't really need to be played anymore, outside of wanting to experience a piece of history. Thanks for watching. In this video, unlike every other I've ever made, I'll speak about the fact that I made this video really fast. I mean, about a week for a video? That's pretty good if you're asking me. But enough about that. Let's instead look to the future of the channel, as I often do on my Twitter, that you should probably follow by the way. The next long, in-depth, and super awesome video I'm making is about Minecraft. I have often alluded to the fact that it will mostly cover 1.12.2, the best update that the game has ever seen. But I will also speak about everything else, even some of the newer stuff. I will take this video as an opportunity to talk about everything that I've ever done in Minecraft, from the very beginning to the very end. This is not a small feat. In fact, it would not be all that surprising if this video took me another 6 or so months. But don't fret, I'll keep making these shorter, more concise videos throughout, so don't get too worried. you'll see at least a video every month, and that's a promise. Except if I die or go away or something seriously goes wrong, in which case you should probably look at my Twitter that you just followed. Also, you. Yes, you. The Patreon or just very loyal watcher watching to the very end past the credits. Thank you. Seriously.